Research shows that a simple, inexpensive powder has the potential to support the reduction of accumulated fat, effectively build muscle, and control inflammation in the body without requiring a complex regimen or expensive program. This compound has been thoroughly researched, is safe and effective to the extent that scientists continue to discover new benefits years after it made waves. This is not an exotic or secret substance reserved only for professional bodybuilders. It is an accessible tool for almost everyone. Especially for those over 60, its effects can be profoundly transformative. The goal of this presentation is not to promote a fleeting trend or a miracle cure, but to discuss the scientific basis, what truly works, and how we can leverage tools that have been tested repeatedly to maintain strength, clarity, and activity as we age. Today we will delve into creatine, one of the most powerful yet often misunderstood supplements. We will analyze how it works, how to use it correctly, and why a small daily amount, about 5 to 7 grams, can make a big difference in life. First, an important question needs to be asked. Why does creatine become more important as we age? Why should someone aged 65, 70, or older care about a powder often associated with young gym goers? The answer lies in 3 fundamental challenges that most of us face over time: increased inflammation, slowed metabolism, and decreased muscle mass. These are not just minor inconveniences. They are the root causes of fatigue, weakness, uncontrollable weight gain, and prolonged recovery times. Remarkably, creatine directly impacts all 3 of these issues. It's like flipping a biological switch, affirming the ability to maintain strength, resilience, and the capacity to thrive. Let's consider inflammation. This term is often mentioned. But what does it truly mean? Inflammation is the body's natural response to injury or stress. However, when it becomes chronic, when it smoulders beneath the surface, it contributes to joint pain, heart disease, cognitive decline, and a general feeling of exhaustion. As we age, the body tends to produce more inflammatory signals even when there is no illness or injury. This situation is like a fire alarm that never stops ringing, and that constant noise exhausts us. Next is the slowing metabolism. The number of calories your body burns at rest gradually decreases over time. Cells don't produce energy as efficiently as before. This can lead you to notice that you can't eat as much as before without gaining weight, or to feel tired more often even without strenuous activity. Finally, there's sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass that begins in the 30s and accelerates after age 60. Less muscle means less strength, less balance, and less independence. It increases the risk of falls, fractures, and the inability to perform favorite activities. So, when we say creatine addresses inflammation, supports metabolism, and directly builds and preserves muscle, we're not talking about appearance. We're talking about quality of life, the ability to play with grandchildren, carry groceries on your own, travel without exhaustion, and maintain freedom thanks to a body that still functions well. Before diving deeper, it's important to clarify misunderstandings. What exactly is creatine, and why is there so much misinformation and myth surrounding it? The truth is, creatine is not a steroid. It's not a risky experimental powder synthesized in a lab. Creatine is a natural compound that the body already produces on its own, primarily in the liver and kidneys, and stores in the muscles. Its job is to help produce ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the energy currency of every cell in the body. When muscles contract, when the brain sends signals, when the heart beats, ATP is the energy source for all those activities. Creatine helps regenerate ATP faster, especially during short bursts of high-intensity activity. The most effective and well-researched form of creatine is creatine monohydrate. It has been around for decades, is inexpensive, and safe. While some supplement companies might want you to believe otherwise, more complex forms like creatine hydrochloride or creatine ethyl ester are not better. Many studies show that plain creatine monohydrate works just as well, if not better, than these more expensive alternatives. So, save your money and choose the proven kind. An interesting finding from recent studies is that how you take creatine is almost as important as taking it. Creatine is transported into muscle cells by a specific protein called SLC6A8. This transporter is sodium dependent, or in other words, salt dependent. When creatine is combined with a small amount of salt or an electrolyte drink, studies show that muscles can absorb 40 to 50% more creatine than when taken alone. The reason is that if sodium levels are low, creatine is not efficiently transported into muscle cells. Instead, it remains in the space around the cells, extracellular fluid. And that's when you might notice water retention or bloating that some people complain about. So if you've ever felt bloated when taking creatine, it might not be because you're taking too much, but because you're not taking enough sodium to help your body absorb it. Another piece of this puzzle that is slowly becoming clear is a compound called GAA, guanidinoacetate, acetate, a precursor that the body uses to make creatine. Some studies now show that combining GAA with creatine can help it cross the blood-brain barrier more effectively, opening up a world of cognitive benefits that we will discuss in detail later. For now, however, it's important to know that how you take creatine with a little salt, possibly with GAA consistently every day, can significantly change its effectiveness for you. So what does creatine actually do when it's inside your muscles? Let's discuss its effects on muscles, as this is where it truly gets exciting, especially for older adults. Many studies, including a large review from mid-2024, have looked at people under 50 who are doing resistance training. On average, those who took creatine gained about 1.1 kilocalories more lean muscle mass compared to those who trained without it. Remarkably, they also lost about 0.7 kilos of fat. Creatine not only helps build muscle, but also supports fat loss. Researchers are still trying to figure out exactly why this happens. It could be related to reduced inflammation, allowing fat cells to break down and burn more efficiently. Or it could be that greater muscle mass increases resting metabolic rate, helping to burn more calories even at rest. Or it could be an entirely different mechanism. However, the important thing is that this isn't just about looking more toned. It's about changing body composition in a way that supports better health, better mobility, and better metabolic function. In terms of strength gains, the data is equally impressive. A late 2023 analysis looked at over 20 different studies and found that people taking creatine could, on average, lift about 4.5 kilos more in upper body exercises and about 11.3 kilos more in lower body exercises across various movements. These are averages, so individual results will vary. However, think about the practical implications of this. If you're someone who struggles to get up from a chair, feels tired climbing stairs, or worries about carrying a bag of dog food from the car, even a moderate increase in strength can be life-changing. What's particularly interesting is that creatine seems to have a greater effect on the lower body than the upper body. The reason could be that the larger muscle groups in the legs, glutes, and hips have more creatine transporters, or they simply respond better to the energy boost that creatine provides. Either way, if your goal is to build stronger legs, improve balance, or reduce the risk of falls, creatine is an incredibly powerful tool. So, how much should you take? And does timing matter? The science on this has evolved quite a bit in recent years. For a long time, the standard recommendation was 5 grams per day. That's still a solid baseline, but newer research suggests that 7 grams might actually be optimal for most people, especially if your goal is to maximize muscle growth and strength. If you're specifically focused on lower body training, for example, squats, lunges, leg press, or just walking more, a consistent daily dose of about 7 grams seems to be best. If you're more interested in building upper body strength, perhaps you want to improve your ability to lift heavy objects overhead, carry bags, or do push-ups, there's some evidence that a loading phase can yield better results. A loading phase means taking a higher dose, about 20 grams per day, divided into smaller doses over about 5 to 7 days. After that, you drop down to a maintenance dose of about 5 to 7 grams. This approach seems to saturate upper body muscle creatine stores faster, which might explain why some people see quicker growth in their chest, shoulders, and arms. However, the reality is that if you're older, your creatine transporters might not be as efficient as when you were younger. That doesn't mean creatine won't work for you. It just means you might need a little more. Some experts now recommend that people over 50 consider taking 10 to 15 grams per day, especially if they are very active or dealing with significant muscle loss. That number might seem high, but remember that creatine is one of the most researched and safest supplements available. The risks are minimal and the potential benefits are enormous. Regarding timing, honestly, it's less important than you might think. For years, people obsessed over whether to take creatine before or after a workout. The truth is, consistency is far more important than timing. Your muscles store creatine over time, So as long as you take it every day, you're building those stores and reaping the benefits. Some people prefer to take it with a meal, some with a shake, some just mixed with water and a pinch of salt. Find what works for you and stick with it. Creatine isn't just about muscles and strength. It also has a profound impact on your overall metabolism and recovery. This is something that's often overlooked. A large review from 2023 looked at both anaerobic exercise, like weightlifting and sprinting, and aerobic exercise, like walking, cycling, and swimming. What was surprising to many was that creatine improved performance in both types. You might think, wait, I thought creatine was only for short, explosive movements. Why would it help with endurance? Good question. It turns out creatine does more than just rapidly regenerate ATP. It reduces inflammation throughout the body, decreases oxidative stress, damage from free radicals, improves acid buffering capacity, helping muscles clear lactic acid and other waste products that cause soreness and fatigue, and accelerates glycogen replenishment, meaning the carbohydrates you eat are stored more efficiently in your muscles and liver, ready to fuel your next activity. All of this leads to better recovery, and better recovery means you can do more often, without feeling burnt out. Whether you are a weightlifter, someone who walks every morning, or someone who just wants to feel less tired at the end of the day, creatine can help. It's like giving your body a more efficient engine. Not just more powerful, but also smoother running, less wasteful, and quicker to repair. Another point worth mentioning is that women may actually need more creatine than men. This might seem counterintuitive, especially with old myths that women should avoid creatine for fear of excessive muscle gain or water retention. However, recent research has shown that women naturally store about 10% more creatine in their muscles than men at baseline. Yet their bodies produce about 70 to 80% less endogenous creatine, i.e., creatine produced by the body itself. So, women start with a higher storage capacity, but they make much less natural creatine, which means they need to get more from their diet or supplements to fill those stores. The practical takeaway is that if you are a woman, consider taking about 10 to 20% more creatine than the standard recommendation. So instead of 7 grams, you might aim for 8 or 9 grams. And if you take it with a little sodium, as discussed earlier, you'll avoid bloating and actually get the creatine where it needs to go, into your muscles, not floating around in the extracellular fluid. Now let's move on to a topic that might surprise you even more: creatine's effects on the brain. We've spent a lot of time talking about muscles, metabolism, and strength, but some of the most exciting research in the last few years has been on creatine's impact on cognitive function, memory, mood, and mental resilience. Frankly, for those looking to maintain their sharpness as they age, this might be the most important part of the entire discussion. Your brain, like your muscles, runs on ATP. In fact, the brain is one of the most energy-demanding organs in the body, using up to 20% of your total energy at rest. And just like muscles, the brain stores creatine, or more specifically, a compound called phosphocreatine, which helps regenerate ATP quickly when you need to think fast, concentrate intensely, or process complex information. When you supplement with creatine, you increase the amount of phosphocreatine stored in your brain, and that changes the entire energy dynamic of how your brain functions. Picture it this way: your brain typically runs on a mix of glucose and other fuels, and when demand is high, for example, when you're trying to solve a problem, remember a name, or focus on a conversation in a noisy room, the brain needs to produce ATP quickly. If phosphocreatine stores are low, that process slows down. You might feel mentally foggy, forgetful, or mentally exhausted. But when those stores are replenished, the brain has access to instant energy. It's like going from a flickering light bulb to a steady, brilliant beam. A 2022 study showed that just 5 grams of creatine per day significantly and noticeably improved memory, especially in people over 65. We're talking about the ability to recall names, dates, and details more easily, the ability to follow conversations better, the ability to retain information without feeling it slipping away. But it goes deeper than that. Research also shows that creatine reduces oxidative stress in the brain, one of the main causes of cognitive decline and neurodegenerative diseases. It